I'm going to read a response by Count Bertrand, the English translation. Longwood, 22nd of July, 1818. Sir, my letter, dated the 20th, was an answer to the letter which you did the honor to write me on the 16th instant. The present is a reply to your letter of the 12th, and to that dated the 21st. If, sir, you do not wish answers, cease to write. First, the insult you caused to be shown to the emperor by his gardener, one of his domestic servants, 3 months ago, took place under his own eyes. He witnessed it himself. The evidence of anybody else, therefore, is insignificant. The certificates you have sent do not contradict the fact. Since then, the same gardener has frequently exercised the same duty at the door of the house. To deny the fact is not giving an assurance that it shall not be repeated, but on the contrary shows that it will. Second, the hindrance you have occasioned by your insinuations and your secret orders to the surgeon of the Conqueror for Mr. Stokos assisting the emperor in his disorder with the view of imposing upon him Mr. Baxter, who was your surgeon when you commanded that Italian corps, and who has since had the drawing up of false bulletins. The persecutions you have exercised and daily exercised towards Dr. O'Meara to oblige him to leave the emperor, the latter's debility and disorder, the result of your harsh proceedings, but too strongly justify the assertions contained in my words. Third, Mr. Leicester, whom you imposed on us as orderly officer, who is no longer in the service and who holds no other commission than a command in the militia, a person who forms no part of the English army, who belongs to no corps, who has been your creature for many years and is altogether dependent upon you, who will sign whatever you dictate or conceive whatever you require, will say whatever you please, having no other will, no other conscience than yours. That is to say, that of an avowed enemy is more convenient to you, no doubt, than the acknowledged property of a captain who belongs to a regular regiment and who has to lose a reputation and a conscience of his own. In the name of the Emperor Napoleon, I am directed to protest, first, against all violations of the boundary by the domestics, workmen, or others whom you may, secretly clothed with the garb of public authority. Second, against injuries done to Dr. O'Meara to oblige him to leave this place, and against the obstructions, open or covert, which you have occasion or may occasion to prevent Napoleon's being assisted in his disorder with the advice and opinion of a medical practitioner in whom he may have confidence, credited to that service by his Britannic Majesty, or admitted publicly to exercise his function in the island. Third, against the testimony, reports, and writing of the militia officer Leicester, who was only stationed at Longwood as an instrument of hatred and vengeance. I demand that my letter of the 20th and the present one be laid before your government. I have the honor to be, etc., etc. Signed, Count Bertrand. Let's see what the response is. On receiving the above, Sir Hudson Lowe sent for Colonel Leicester, to whom he showed Count Bertrand's letter. The colonel, on his return to Longwood, wrote the following one to the Count, which was delivered to him by the hands of Lieutenant Jackson. Longwood, 24th July, 1818. Sir, I have seen a letter of yours addressed to His Excellency the Governor, in which you take the liberty of vilifying my character in the most false, infamous, and wanton manner. You say, sir, that I am his creature, ready to execute any order, be it ever so atrocious. This can only be the invention of your own mind, as it is impossible for you to know anything of the sentiments which occupy my breast. Were I disposed to retaliate on the sycophant of the far-famed Corsican, Europe knows too well I have most ample grounds for it, but I disdain such conduct. I shall therefore only briefly say that if you have the smallest spark remaining in that nice sense of honor for which your nation is so justly celebrated, you cannot refuse to give the satisfaction of a gentleman to an officer who has served his country for these last 34 years with zeal and fidelity. Should you decline this, I shall be obliged to publish you to the world as the vilest coward, as well as the basest calumniator I pledge my honor that the governor has not the slightest idea of the step I've taken, nor any other person, but the friend employed in delivering this letter. If you have no pistols, I can procure them, and the business may be settled with the utmost secrecy. At such a time and place as you may wish to appoint. I remain, sir, yours, T. Leicester, Lieutenant Colonel, B.M. Service, to Count Bertrand, ETC, Longwood. On the next morning, a still more appropriate letter was written by Colonel Leicester to Count Bertrand, and on the 25th of July, that gentleman was removed from Longwood, as will appear from the following letter. Okay, this is in French. Here's the translation. Sir, I have the honor, this is from Bertrand, to send you a letter which I have received. This old man appears to be out of his senses. He cannot be acquainted with my official correspondence, except by your orders. I have not answered him, nor shall I answer him. He is merely a second, and should his principal, being a general officer, require me to explain, I'm ready to meet him. I have the honor to be ETC, Count Bertrand. Trying to figure this out. Here it is. Sir, I have this day received your letter of yesterday's date. I feel extremely concerned that Lieutenant Colonel Leicester should have so far given way to the impulse of his wounded feelings as to have addressed such a letter to you as that of which you have sent me a copy. This is from Hudson Lowe. At the same time, I beg to observe that I do not feel myself bound to conceal from the knowledge of any British officer employed in my situation of such important trust any defamatory imputation which may be endeavored to be cast upon him in the execution of it, nor can I avoid considering you as responsible for any consequence that may result from hazarding such injurious reflections as you have done, particularly when writing in your own name. After being repeatedly informed, I do not consider a letter addressed to me in that form as official. I beg, nevertheless, to express my earnest hope that the letter you have received may, from its irritating tendency, not have been made known to the person on whom you are attending, and if it should have been communicated, that you will assure him of my extreme displeasure at its having been transmitted. Lieutenant Colonel Leicester will, in consequence, be withdrawn from any further duty at Longwood. I have the honor to be, sir, your most obedient and humble servant, H. Lowe. To General Count Bertrand, Longwood. When in April 1818 I wrote a letter to Count Bertrand, simply announcing my resignation and motives, it was pronounced by Sir Hudson Lowe in his judicial capacity of governor as highly criminal and punishable. In this instance, however, a most indecent provocation to commit murder, because given by two officers employed by himself on a most delicate service, is not only tolerated but attempted to be extenuated by him. And I trust that the reader need scarcely be requested to compare the conduct manifested by Lieutenant Colonel Leicester in such an attack upon a prisoner with the forbearance displayed by the same individual a few hours before, then less fastidious. His duty imperiously required him to appeal to his protector, Sir Hudson Lowe. It is unnecessary for me to make any comment on the charge of cowardice preferred against Count Bertrand, as it is sufficiently refuted by his letter of the 25th of July, cautiously concealed by the author of the Facts, wherein the governor is explicitly informed of the Count's readiness to give satisfaction to the principal, while he declines having any communication with an officer whom he regarded as a mere instrument. Since my removal from St. Helena, I have been credibly informed, not by an anonymous author, that Sir Hudson Lowe caused the officers of the 66th Regiment to be assembled by Brigadier General Sir George Bingham, who was ordered to prohibit them from speaking to Count Bertrand, and the pretext alleged was that the Count had refused to accept of a challenge. Sir Hudson Lowe is civil governor of St. Helena and sits as judge at the quarter sessions, which are regularly held in that island, and he is also vested with the power of remitting or of carrying into execution sentences of death pronounced by himself in his judicial capacity. Although the Council of St. Helena is composed of the governor and 2 other members, still by the existing constitution of the colony, if the last 2 differ in opinion with the governor or vote against him, his single vote carries the point in discussion, and the only resource left for them is the privilege of being permitted to enter a dissent upon the records, which, however, has no influence upon the judgment pronounced. It is for the public to decide whether Sir Hudson Lowe, whose most bounden duty it was as civil governor and chief justice of St. Helena to prevent any breach of the peace or to punish the violators of it, and his conduct towards Count Bertrand was actuated by those upright principles of justice and impartiality which ought to govern a judge, or whether it was dictated by a spirit of unnecessary hostility against an old and highly respected soldier whose body is covered with the scars received during a service of 30 years for his country, and who, when Sir Hudson Lowe was a subordinate officer attached to Blucher's army, was lieutenant general and commanded the army opposed to the Prussian leader. In page 47 and the 2 following, we are favored with a long detail to prove the inaccuracy of a statement which appeared in the public papers relative to the breaking up of a carriage sent from the Cape of Good Hope for Count Bertrand. Amidst the many stubborn facts and unanswerable statements which have been made since the appointment of Sir Hudson Lowe to the government of St. Helena, no wonder if the opportunity thus afforded should have been taken ample advantage of. And in congratulating the author on his solitary triumph, it will be for the public to judge whether, after the open acknowledgment of Count Bertrand to the orderly officer at Longwood, thanking Sir Thomas Reed for his attention, there is a shadow of probability of such a story having ever emanated from that place.